Well, welcome. Good evening, Element Church. Thank you so much for joining us for our midweek connection. Whether you're joining us on Facebook Live, on our new online church platform live, or maybe you're watching this on demand later. Either way, we're glad that you're joining with us. And Cameron, thanks for being here again to host.
Thank you, Adam.
Be a part
Your
of it.
time is much more important than mine.
No.
Thrilled to do this again.
Cool.
We're going to start, I think, with another discussion question for people. If you're
Great.
following along or doing this as a small group or as a family, or if you're going to join us for the church's midweek connection right after this at 6:30, you can find the details for the Zoom meeting in the comments section. But the opening question this week, as we talked about, this is Holy Week, right?
Yeah.
Jumping into Holy Week. So we just wanted to ask you guys, do you have any traditions that you do as a family that you do or have traditionally done as a church or with other churches, just in preparing for Easter throughout the Holy Week? And if so, how are you sort of adjusting to the COVID situation? So feel free to chat about that. One thing that we're doing as a church to try and help that out is we're going to be doing a Easter devotional for the next several days leading up to Easter. You want to talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, every morning we'll release just something simple, just to kind of turn all of our minds in that direction and kind of help us, something to think about throughout the day. And so we'll read a portion of scripture, something that took place in the last week of Jesus' life, and then maybe provide a thought or two just to think about during the day.
Yeah, and I think it's super helpful in these times where we don't have routine, that hopefully we can start trying to build some sort of thing, piece into our schedule as we try to lead our hearts and our minds towards Easter. So, Adam, kicking this thing off, you started your sermon talking about how our relationship with God is based on faith. And so I just wanted to open this up as a starting point for you, just to unpack some of that for us.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important for us to just always keep that at the forefront, that we are saved by grace through faith. Ephesians 2:8, we mentioned that on Sunday. And then even with that aspect, it finishes that thought with, and this not of yourself, but the gift of God. So even our faith is a gift that God gives us. It's not something we create or manufacture. So I think it's always important for us to talk about it, but especially given the nature of what we talked about on Sunday about doing good deeds, and modeling Jesus's behavior and ministry and activity with other people, that we don't allow us to start thinking it's all about just doing the right things or doing a bunch of charity work or something like that. That's ultimately not what it's about.
Definitely.
Those things, all of those have to flow out of faith. That's where they have to, their genesis has to come out of our faith.
Yeah, and you started with talking about how there is no category, right, for this sort of intellectual acceptance of Jesus or intellectual, assent about Jesus without any behavior or life change that follows that. Can you unpack that, right? Because there's this sort of dichotomy, not really dichotomy, but a thing to work out, right? Of hey, it's not driven, our faith is God-given and handed out, and it's not based on works, and yet there's an element of, there should be some element of your life that is affected by that.
Yeah, and I think some of that is just a natural human tendency to kind of compartmentalize our lives. But there really isn't a category for Jesus or the early Christians or the teaching in the New Testament that we can divorce what we believe from what we do. I had a mentor of mine who used to call this practical atheism. This idea that you can claim to believe something, but by all practical means, by the way you live your life, you're an atheist. And the Bible just has no category for that being a reality. And so essentially while faith, we're saved by our faith, our deeds or our works are going to show what we genuinely believe, not what we just claim to believe.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really big point for us as Christians growing up in America, where we're used to this kind of cultural understanding or this idea about Jesus, but maybe not having it impact our lives as much. We wanted to open this up as a discussion point for you guys to think about, hey, where in my life am I not allowing the truth and the understanding of what Jesus has done for me to impact my behavior? Or maybe it's just a portion of your life that's an element for you. So feel free to chat about that. I love the portion of your sermon this weekend where you unpacked how that played out in the early church. So I was wondering if you could just flesh that out again a little bit for us. How this idea that there is no separation between your intellectual faith or your understanding of faith and your behavior, how did that impact the early church?
Yeah, well, we see it right from the early days. From as soon as the church begins, in the book of Acts, immediately we see genuine care and concern for one another and a willingness to self-sacrifice, whatever that might be, resources, money, time, even like safety and security for the benefit and betterment of the other believers around us. So that immediately becomes an important part of the church. We see as it continues to grow, this idea carry on. Like we didn't talk about it on Sunday, but one of the big ministries that Paul had was going around and collecting money from churches throughout the Roman Empire and sending it back to Jerusalem. Because at a certain point during the first century, they went through a great famine and there was a lot of suffering because of it. And so part of Paul, while he's going to start new churches, is also raising money. I mean, like, these are our brothers and sisters in Christ. Like, we got to take care of them, even though you've never met them. So all these people he's like trying to raise money from, they've never met the people in Jerusalem, but they're all interconnected. So we see it really early on. And then as the Christian movement grows within the Roman Empire, what we see is this stark contrast start to develop between Christians and non-Christians, and how they relate to the poor and the needy and the sick and the broken. And it becomes a distinguishing mark for the Christians. And a lot of historians and philosophers, when looking back, will give credit to part of the success of like the attractiveness of Christianity was the way that they cared for people who everyone else ignored.
No, and I loved your quote from Julian Apostate, where he's sort of criticizing his own guy, saying, hey, look, bros, like they're doing a better job than we are. He says that
not only are they taking care of their poor, but ours as well. Like, even with like care and love, like they didn't just limit it to other Christians, although they did that. They extended it to even people who wouldn't call themselves Christians, like just this genuine love that they wanted to share and spread.
And I think it was cool too. It was exciting for me just to be reminded of that rich heritage that we have. Like hospitals came out of this, right? It wasn't just Christians sort of jumped on the bandwagon later and started building hospitals, but that was actually a fundamental thing that they started with. So I was really encouraged by this section. One of the discussion questions we want to offer up for you guys is, as Adam was sort of going through all those historical examples and fleshing out all those different times where Christians stepped up, what did that elicit within you? And what did you think of as you went through that section? As we continue on, though, how do you see that playing out today? Either, as a church globally, church locally, etc.
Kind of two thoughts there. How it is playing out is, as we see, like a lot of the Christian movement, like Christianity is growing at an incredible rate in places like Africa and Asia. And again, while faith is at the center of it, like it's a lot of it is good deeds driven by that faith and caring for those who desperately need it. And so where we see Christianity spreading the most around the world are in places where people are doing this still and doing it really effectively, and just like letting that genuine love and faith like come out into their actions. But I think also when we talk about not just how is it, but how should it be playing out, like I think what we're dealing with right now, while poverty may not be at this extreme levels that we've seen, at other times and places, like there's a lot of people who are hurting, who are scared and confused, and it's just a lot of uncertainty about the future. And I think this is an opportunity that we have to like step up to the plate and do what Christians have been doing since Jesus instituted all this. This is such an opportunity for us to model Jesus for people.
A huge moment as the church in this time to really stand up. Because I think a lot of times people want to turn to institutions, that have sort of supplanted the church, whether it's government, whether it's, financial institutions, other things to help provide that. And this is a great chance for us as a church to be the hands and feet that we were for a long portion of history, right? Element helps. Can you give us a little insight onto that again? I know we've talked about it several times, but I want to bring it up again.
Like the motivation behind it was just trying to connect people, those who need help and those who can give it. And in life, we all go through different seasons where we need help and we can give it. And so wherever you are today, we want you to get plugged into this process. If you can give help, great. If you need it, we want you to be a part of this. And so we just wanted to see people come together. And it's just hard sometimes for that to happen, because how often do you know whether or not your neighbor's struggling to buy food? Right? How are they going to knock on your door and say, hey, we need some canned goods? Like, that's generally in our culture, that's not going to happen. And so we're trying to create an environment where that can happen. People can have those conversations that they normally won't have.
People helping people.
That's right.
I love it. You had a great point in your sermon that oftentimes, in our culture, in our society, in this, extreme devotion to independence, many times the hardest thing is to ask for help, right? I was wondering if you could talk to that a little bit, maybe some of the drivers that are behind that, why that's, probably a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
And how, we can help in those situations.
Sure.
Really. Like, how to motivate people that need that help, that are maybe thinking it's shameful or whatever else hiding. They don't want to bring it out. Why should they not do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of why it exists is that's just our culture. Like, we pride ourselves on independence, both on an individual level and on a national level. And I mean, we want to teach our kids to be like responsible and to take care of themselves, but sometimes we feel that, I think even as we're raising kids, of like, you need to learn to not rely on anyone, take care of everything yourself. And it's dangerous because it's just such a barrier to community and relationships. Like, we want to be responsible, but we all have needs. Like, it may not always be financial, but all of us have needs. And part of what makes a community strong is when people are comfortable enough to say, hey, here's what I need, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially. Like, there's so many different aspects to it. And that's what fosters genuine community, is when you can say, hey, I have needs, and someone else can say, hey, I can help.
Yes.
And as long as we don't allow ourselves to say what we need, like, it creates a barrier to the community that we were created for. And so even just outside of like, hey, we want to get you financial help in this particular crisis, like, there's just a lesson for us to learn in like being willing to say, I can't do this on my own. I need help, or I need support, I need encouragement.
Yeah.
That's what God designed us for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this idea of independence is such a lie, and it's sort of self-perpetuating, right? Because if I don't open up about my needs, you think everybody around you's got it figured out. You're the only one that has needs, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't want to open up, and we just create this, increasing pulling each other apart rather than bringing the community together. So I think this situation's forcing us, hopefully, to admit our dependence a little bit more, and it's something, as you mentioned, this is what we should be doing all the time.
Yeah.
Right? I love, I was watching something from Paul David Tripp the other day, and he mentioned, that we were created in dependence. And he said, I love the idea that Adam and Eve were created in a perfect garden with perfect humanity and in perfect relationship with God, and yet God still talks to them.
Yeah.
Right? Because they are still dependent, right? There's still that relational aspect to it.
Yeah.
And so, I think you bring up a great point. All right. We'll finish this, I guess, with one discussion question.
Be great.
The last discussion question. Just want you to do a little self-reflecting and talk amongst yourselves or in your groups about where in your life are you hesitant to ask for help? Right? Where is it that maybe you hold back, or whether it's this situation that we're facing or just in general, where do you have some of those struggles? So feel free to chat about that. And then that's all I got.
Yeah, just a reminder, to be a part of Element Helps, go to elementhelps.org. And then you can get the information. You can let us know what you may need or how you want to help, or both. If you've got some needs, but you have some ability to help in a different way, let's bring people together. So elementhelps.org. And then one other thing that I just want to tag on is just a reminder, you mentioned we were in Holy Week this week. This Friday at 7 p.m. On Facebook Live and on our Church Online platform, we just want to invite people for just a communion opportunity, worship opportunity together, where we'll just reflect for a few minutes about where communion came from, that Last Supper that Jesus has with his disciples right before his crucifixion. Talk a little bit about the genesis of that, where it comes from, and then how Jesus redefines that experience and why we continue to celebrate it today. I think it'd be a good way too, just to reflect on Good Friday and prepare our minds and our hearts for Easter. So 7 p.m., join us live on either the Church Online platform or Facebook Live. We would love for you to join in with us. You don't need to have the proper communion supplies. So any kind of bread or crackers will work. I mean, goldfish. Yep.
Love it. Jesus multiplying fish.
Come on, man.
Right there.
Bread and fish together.
Seriously.
It's kind of spiritual. It's biblical,
probably
I think.
more holy.
Any kind of bread, crackers, and any kind of juice, wine, drink of any sort. Like, it's not specific. We're not worrying about those kind of details.
Yeah.
We're just going to come together and take those elements, whatever we have, as a representation.
Yeah. And I encourage you too, if you've been using Facebook, use Facebook, but that church online platform is great. We launched it this last weekend for our service, and I highly recommend it. I think it's pretty cool. So
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That online platform, in case they don't know, yourelement.online.church.
And you can find that on our website too if you forget that later on. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks, Adam.
Cameron, thanks. Thank you guys. Hopefully we'll see you on Friday.